Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Saturday roundtable. College football, basketball, and baseball. You're damn right it is. I can assure you, Auburn coach Butch Thompson is out there getting ready for some kind of practice or workout because you know what? You never waste a day to try to get better. We'll talk with Coach Butch Thompson. Billy Roberts checks in from over in Brookhaven, not Atlanta, but right next to it in Buckhead. Second segment, Kevin Scarbinsky, great sports writer, long time Birmingham News, now the Birmingham Lead, and CoachSafely.org will join us. In the second hour, Buddy Martin, GatorbaitMedia.com, former sports editor, chief sports editor of the New York Daily News, the Denver Post, the Rocky Mountain Post, the Denver Post, St. Petersburg Times, now GatorbaitMedia.com, and the Buddy Martin Show, Monday through Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Facebook, Twitter, it's everywhere. It's great. You learn a lot. We're here 6 days a week, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Sidelines.live. Excuse me. Hear us live. You can sync us in your car, truck, in your boat. I know we got a lot of listeners that listen to me when they're duck hunting right now. Lots of my friends are out in the duck blind right now, all over Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, wherever you are. Thank you for listening. And we listen to the podcast. Also, if you miss us live, go to our website, www.sidelines.live. or 680thefan.com, the podcast park up in Atlanta at the Battery, which is about 50 feet. What a great office. 50 feet from the front gate to Truist Park, home of the Atlanta Braves. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. All right, at sidelines_live. We're a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's who we are. We talk about sports. And that's what we focus on. We get the best guests from anywhere. And all right, batter up, next man up. The pride of Amory, Mississippi. One of our favorites, Coach Butch Thompson, Auburn baseball coach, been to 2 of the last 3 College World Series. He wakes up and say, he'll say that it's going to be a great day. He'll say, Omaha, it's going to be a great day. Butch Thompson. And Coach, thanks for joining us. And let's talk about the progress. And I've already got some questions for you from Doug Dean, one of our Sidelines team members, who is currently up in a deer stand over there around Tyler, Alabama, over in the Black Belt. And but he is listening, but he's got some questions for you. And we're going to go to those. But first off, welcome to Sidelines, and thanks for taking time to join us.
Good morning. Happy Saturday, Rob. Hope everybody's doing great, man. Excited to be with you.
Yeah, glad to talk, man. Let's talk about what's going on practice-wise. There is a ton of stuff happening every day that you deal with, but you've got 35. How many players you got right now in the workouts?
You know, every team's a little bit different. We'll be allowed 38 this year because it's a 35-man roster, and then if you have any additional guys that were affected in COVID. So we have 3 in that category. Cason Howell, our center fielder, Sheehan, a pitcher for us, and then Pierce, the right fielder. So we have 38. So it'll be a little bit different than, you know, everybody else. It depends on how many COVID guys they have left over. And then it looks like, you know, there's a lot of legislation with this transformational committee. I'm sure that's coming up with all the potential rule changes that's going to happen in college athletics. So, you know, we're baseball shooting for 40. I guess the first thing that come down, maybe since we talked last week or is in the middle, is for the volunteer assistant, that title to go away. And that's across college athletics. So I think you're going to start seeing some one-offs. We've been looking at this for, you know, a long time. And so that's really awesome that becomes a full-time position. And the volunteer tag will be removed from athletics. So I think that's great. But the roster limit, all those things that are in flux right now and will be decided by this committee and then hopefully approved by ADs and presidents.
Yeah, and one thing interesting, I worked with a guy that played baseball out at BYU and finished at the University of Memphis. and he was on an NCAA committee, student athlete. That was his role, and they were pushing really hard to get the 85 football scholarships put on a separate island, and then that would allow college men's baseball, obviously, to get a full allotment of scholarships. And they were rebuked by the NCAA committee. And I don't know if any of those people on that committee were athletes ever and knew what it was like to work your tail off and not be able to get a scholarship or just have part of it, and what that means to have a full scholarship. And where are those efforts now? Is this, you just referenced something, but why wouldn't they have someone like you, student athlete at Birmingham Southern? You've worked your way to where you are, so you've got real life experience, and I think Billy would agree with me.
Yeah, it just seems like now there's a chance for more movement. So I think, Commissioner Sankey is, a vital part, I think, of this transformational committee. So I think we have gone back to the drawing boards with the right people, and I think it's the right time. I do think in the past, no matter what you thought was a good idea as a coach or somebody in athletics, it's just the movement or getting things through seemed to be a challenge. You could yell from the mountaintops and you felt like there was no entry or no way to move it. It seems like we're at a place of understanding as an industry, especially from the top. And it's hard for me to act like an expert on this when I'm in the middle and not involved in any of these decisions. Of course, I do think our voices are heard. I think our athletic directors do a really good job of listening, trying to understand and balance everything, because there's a football component, being a baseball coach. But, Rob, I'm in a unique position where I have 3 daughters, which I affectionately call strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. And so there's a desire and an understanding in our coaches here at Auburn, there's a Title IX component, and there's an understanding and caring as we're at, like we're beating, like looking for something, trying to get something for us, that if you're a true steward of something, if you want to try to be a part of leaving the right legacy and leaving the sport better when you depart, it's all of it. It's football, which is the engine. It drives it and has the most fuel. But all 550 student athletes at Auburn means something. And I think there's a ton of coaches and a ton of people across the country that feel the same way. So if football could move to a different bucket and we could do some things to make it better for the rest of our student athletes, we need our smartest, brightest, and best on the job right now, because I think the opportunity for action and things to really take place has never been better in my career.
Yeah. I mean, and this is exciting because hearing you say that, and you don't say things until you are comfortable knowing you and watching how you operate. You think things through. You got a mind like a mechanical engineer. And I'm glad to hear that. Billy Roberts jumping here with Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson. And you ain't going to go many places where you can hear real talk like this. I love it.
That's right. Hey, Coach, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning.
Hey, I was curious I wanted to pick up on a conversation thread we were doing about a week ago with you, with the relationship with minor league baseball and college baseball. I know a couple of years ago when baseball did a consolidation in the minor leagues, that kind of reduced the number of teams down to 4 in the minor leagues, where there used to be more than that. And now there's a lot of independent teams out there, that previously were affiliated with major league teams. Has that impacted or maybe helped your recruiting at the college level, given that some of these guys maybe that would have been drafted in lower rounds now would be going to either an independent league somewhere or maybe could go play college ball at Auburn? Is it made it more attractive for you to offer college baseball as an option to them recruiting wise?
Yeah, we talked about the COVID stuff at Jump Street here, but Major League Baseball, when they restructure some things, it absolutely has kept more players and older players, keep in mind, in college baseball for another year or two. So they went from a traditional 40-round draft to 20 rounds. So, Man, that's cut in half. So that means you got to get drafted in the first 20 rounds before you go out. And, there's some independent ball is probably good right now because you got some good players. And when when they're extinguished after this year, there's not going to be any more of these COVID holdovers. And I think over the next couple of years, where are those guys going to go play? So I think independent ball is, again, there'll be a rise out of that, because there's going to be a collection of good players that don't go in those 20 rounds that would have traditionally went 25th round, 30th round, and there's not as many minor league teams for them to go to. So if you want to stay in the game, because if you get out of this game for a year or two, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
I love what Ignaz Paderewski is, the famous Polish pianist. And Ignaz says, if I don't practice for 1 day, I know it. If I don't practice for 2 days, the orchestra knows it. And if I don't practice for 3 days, the whole world knows it. You know, hitting a baseball, keeping an arm in shape to pitch, this independent ball is going to provide opportunities, because if you don't stay in the fight and keep playing this game, you'll deteriorate so fast it's not even funny. You'll know it, then your teammates will know it, the industry will know it, and you'll be out of a job. So I think independent ball is on the rise, needs to be, to help some of these guys when the time's done, they can't play college baseball anymore. It's rising all ships, you know, so it's making SEC better. We're getting a Case and Howell here for another year. Case and Howell, absolutely. I thought he had a chance to go in 20 rounds. He had a chance to go free agent, didn't want to. He valued another year with us instead of a year of free agency. So he would have traditionally every year been a 25th, 30th round draft pick and would not be here. But we get the benefit of the new setup, and he'll be our center fielder again for, seems like, the 20th year in a row. So that's going to be awesome. But it's happening across the board, and I think every level. And because of these roster squeezes where we're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, I think you're seeing like junior college on the rise. I think there's more talented players at the junior college level. The kids that have suffered have been the seniors coming out of high school. You know, there's a time to be lucky and good. And the last 2 or 3 years, being a senior in high school has been kind of a drag for a segment, a category of those players. The best ones are always getting out, but the guys like me that was like right on the fringe, the opportunities have been less because rosters have been so full and guys are hanging around for another couple of years.
Yeah.
The slots, the musical chairs of the whole deal has not been there the way it's been in the past, but hopefully in the next year or 2 years, we're reset.
Coach, I got a question here from Doug Dean, one of our Sidelines team members. Said, ask Coach, quote, what might have been with Gunnar Henderson. And Doug said he helped get the Auburn coaches on Gunnar, the Selma phenom when Alabama had offered first. And that's Doug's the one who's up in the deer stand over there at his hunting camp right now, but he's listening. But he said he signed with AU in 2019, and then the Orioles offered, I think, $1.77 million. And his follow-up was the angle for Coach Thompson is regarding Gunnar. How much NIL can keep some of these guys at Auburn or other colleges over potentially modest, that's relative term, Major League Baseball offers?
Doug, it's a good question. Just being an old deer hunter up in the stand this morning, freezing cold, and trying to see if nothing walks out there. I went out a couple of weeks ago. I saw 2 squirrels fighting for 2 hours. I'm like, I'm out. Hopefully you're having better luck this morning, Doug. It's just so complex. It's on an individual case-by-case basis. It's like when Gunnar Henderson was offered and that 1.77, you know, the Auburn Tigers not fighting so much anymore. You know, you totally understand because, you know, that's a great family. So if you're taking on an individual basis, his older brother Jackson was on our baseball team that went to Omaha in 2019. So that helps. That helped Auburn attract Gunnar because they got to see the good, bad, and the ugly. And Jackson works over at the Great Alpha in Montgomery, Alabama, and in actuary accounting, and he's brilliant. And Jackson was sharp. Gunnar's a different level of ball player, just like my younger brother was a better player than me. It happens. But Jackson was amazing. Let us know the family. They got to see the real Auburn baseball, the real coaches, how we really operate. We were able to get a commitment from Gunnar and be part of his world and have him as an option for college way before he became the first rounder. We didn't know, you know, but we knew he had a great body, great frame, checked the box of every tool, and he absolutely exploded because that's Selma, Alabama, that Morgan Academy. It's awesome. There's been some great players come through there, but that's small town. I remember the last time I went over to see him before we got close to the draft, and I think every major league team was in attendance in the middle of Selma, Alabama.
Wow.
I'm like, yep, we're going to have a tough time getting old Gunner on our field. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So he's great, but around the country. And then, is that in this NIL, it's so awesome and great, but do you have to spend so much to get somebody like Gunner that you're 2 pitchers short, or you don't have the catcher you want? Do you go value, and how do you get that guy to school? Well, you might be able to do that once or twice if the right family is the right fit and they feel like it's best for them and it's the best trajectory and journey for them to become an established major leaguer. But, there's another concept too of like, all right, we're looking for that guy that's valued between $400,000 and $710,000 in the draft. Mm-hmm. And if we can get 6 of those through scholarship, through NIL, whatever, you paint a better canvas and create a stronger team. Those are the things that, as things are changing weekly, monthly, nobody's got a 5-year plan anymore. Everybody's got like a 3-month plan. And all these things are interesting and fascinating. And, I do miss the part of like recruiting hard, getting your share. Some good guys want to be with you. Teach some baseball, develop, go compete. And now it seems like there's more of, I wish I was smart, like you said, like a mechanical engineer, and could apply some more brains to all these things that we need to do, because it's pretty complex right now, and we're not just baseball coaches anymore.
Yeah, Coach, hold those thoughts, because we're going to take a quick break. We got several questions popping in here, and I know Billy's got some, but we'll be right back with more Auburn coach Butch Thompson, Billy Roberts, Rob Browne after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Coach Thompson, here is, I know, Billy, I know you've got some questions, and like I said, several more. People love it when you're on, not just Auburn fans, but baseball fans and people that are fans of life. And in fact, Audrey and I were talking about the Polish piano player. I missed 1 day of practice. I know it. I missed 2. The orchestra knows it. I missed 3. The whole world knows it. And that's why I noticed highly driven, highly successful people in any profession, sports, business, whatever, are dedicated, and they do what they love, and they love what they do. Just like Billy Roberts with Oracle in Atlanta.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, you mentioned before the break Selma and finding talent in a town like that, and every other scout in the world was out there looking to. In your recruiting career, what is the smallest town that you found somebody that you could recruit that could make it at the level that you're recruiting at? Is like 100 people, 200 people? What do you think the smallest town was?
I had one scout. When you're asking the question, one scout jumped in my mind. It's Joe Mason. He's from over near Prattville, Montgomery, Alabama. So I can't answer the question without talking about him. And I'll give you another one, Rob. Here you go. If you ever seen a turtle on a fence post, he didn't get there by himself. We all have relationships and people that had our back, and he was the best scout in baseball for a while, and he was from Alabama, and he didn't run with the herd, man. And he would go to Jackson, Alabama, and he'd go, "You need to go look at this kid." And I'd go to Jackson, Alabama, and I'm like, all I see is pine trees and a Walmart. That's all that's over there.
Yeah.
All these different places that he would go scout by himself. And it was such a thrill of the chase for him. So Joe sent me to the most remote places in Alabama, Goshen, down around, but it wouldn't be in Mobile. It'd be like out. It'd be off the beaten path. And he did that time and time again to get to meet players. And I think he did that with other coaches, but he was just an amazing man, still amazing man. Can catch crappie like crazy, absolutely was an amazing scout and has sent us all over the places. Now, when you're I'm actually from the suburb of Amory, Mississippi, Rob. I lived on Coontail Road. So when you come from Coontail Road, nothing really impresses me as being smaller as I go around the southeast. I promise you that. But Joe Mason was amazing. He sent me to places and players I never heard of, and I was acting like I was a recruiting coordinator in the state. And probably there was 2 or 3 guys there that we wound up getting that what I would have never heard of if it wasn't for Joe Mason, because scouting's changed. I used to have to use a payphone, and we used to have to call the high school coach that morning and say, "Where's your field?" So I'm dating myself a little bit to 3 decades, but I mean, I had to drive to this small town and, the gas station, take a left, Pizza Hut, take a right, and then I looked for lights. We would look for the lights of the field to navigate to get to the ballpark. Man, how have times changed. And then I'd be driving on the road back home after recruiting somebody, and I need to call another kid. But, buddy, I better do it before 9:30 at night. So I had to check to see if I got quarters as I'm driving down the road. I'm evaluating every gas station. Does this phone look good to stop for my quarters? And I'd have to do it before 9 or 9:30 because there may be a mother or a father jump on that phone. If it's like after 9:30, they'll be like, "Hey, coach, man, it's too late to be calling up in here. Don't be calling our house this late at night." Man, how times have changed from how it started.
It really has. Coach, got another question from a great friend, Maury Gaston, one of a big part of our show. And many of you probably talked to Maury, and Maury's from Sylacauga, works up in Birmingham for American Cast Iron Pipe Company. And he said, "Coach, you probably know John Cohen better than anyone at Auburn. Tell us about his first few months on the job and the impact he's making across campus." And I think people they may know, but in case they don't, you were on his staff, 7 years at Mississippi State? You have been around some highly successful people and learned from some incredible people. But as you said on this show many times, it all started at the kitchen table with your mom and dad.
Yeah. Rob, I know you've mentioned Maury several times. I got a chance in December to speak up to a men's group in Birmingham and got to see Maury and spend some time with him. So that was awesome to finally make that connection. It was great. John Cohen, I know him as a baseball coach, right? I'm his pitching coach. And of course, he's the head coach and the leader of the program at the time. And a great 7 years. So I do know the man. I know it's highly competitive, as competitive as anybody I've been around. His father, Harry, ran the law school at Alabama, of all places, right? Wow. In Tuscaloosa there, and probably a statue out in front of the building of Harry Cohen. So there's a competitiveness, there's a brilliance, and he brings a ton of experience. And I always value that. Like a Darren Schoenrock's just coming in as our pitching coach, been head coach at Memphis the last 18 years. You got Mississippi State, you got Georgia when he worked for Ron Polk. All that experience is what you're looking for, that when a man walks in the door, he already knows what your league's about, because our league is different than every other league, and you can go to work from day one. Carl Nunemaker had been with me at Auburn before. Gabe Gross wore the Auburn uniform. All that's been important to me, and I think it serves us well at Auburn right now to have somebody that not only has been part of the SEC, but been a coach and an athletic director in our conference. Been a head coach at 2 different stops. He was at Kentucky before he came to Mississippi State. And then you just add the brilliance and the intellect that he has. Probably the last piece I would say is creativity. So I love it when people are not just trying to run and be like everybody else. So we're not going to be trying to keep up with anybody else. Maybe historically that's been a tripping point a little bit. I think he's going to set our own course. And I think he's going to be highly competitive, make us second to none. And I think it's going to be fresh, invited and needed for Auburn University right now. I think this is going to be a good time of alignment. We also added a new president who's I'm very excited about. So you got a president, Chris Roberts, John Cohen, a new football coach, and you got a lot of good coaches in a lot of these other sports. There's a lot of sports doing some good things. We're number one in the country in men's golf, and the Bruce Pearl show is always wide open. Gymnastics, and you just question, you go down the line. There's a lot of good things going on with our best alignment we've ever had. But to be honest, I hadn't seen I hadn't seen him a whole lot. It's kind of like he's gone down in a submarine for these first 3 months. You can only imagine having a higher football, getting things strategically lined up and how he wants to do things and getting his group together. It's like I've seen his Periscope pop out of the water a couple of times. Hey, you're doing good. You need anything? Like I'm fine. I'm just getting these boys ready. So I think he knows what I'm all about, and adjustments that he'll need to make for me and to make me better, I'm sure will be to come. But he has been underwater down there deep, trying to lay a good foundation for us. And there's a lot of trust from this person because I've seen it in action.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's great to hear that. And, we got two of our three biggest sports head coaches are from the great state of Mississippi. And, I love Mississippi. I've got a little farm down in Lambert, lifetime hunting rights on in the Delta. Grandparents are from Helena in the Delta. You're from the hill country over on the other side, but Hugh Freeze is from, I believe, the 5-star city. And you know what the 5-star city is, don't you?
I do not.
Senatobia.
Oh, yeah. No.
I don't know if you ever met Alan Callicut. He's a good friend. He was the mayor, and his family, they've had an insurance agency there for over 110 years. He's a Mississippi State alum and watches every baseball game y'all do that when you were there. He is a huge fan of yours. You've got a lot of fans, but Hugh Freeze and you, I could imagine what it would be like if the two of y'all came to dinner to recruit you. And I don't know. I may even say, just put me in the electric chair, man. Give me some of MJ's dinosaur bone ribs we had last night on the grill. I'll do it. But Billy, jump back in here with Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson.
Yeah, I've got two questions. The first one is that when Rob and I were in school, Bo Jackson was playing for Auburn, and to see a guy that big and strong swing an aluminum bat was probably dangerous and scary for the guys out in the field. Do you see a switch to wooden bats in the horizon at all? And would that matter? Do you get questions from Major League Baseball with college programs to kind of get aligned with wooden bats so they could evaluate prospects a little better? Does it matter that much from evaluating talent, whether they're swinging an aluminum bat or a wooden bat?
That's cooled down. All these other things that you're talking about seem to be higher priority. That's been talked about on and off for years. It doesn't seem like there's a big movement for it right now. And wouldn't it be easier to evaluate somebody that's in the same, using the same, product, but the levels are different. We tell the guys that are in high school that we recruit to master that level. That's how you get ready for the SEC. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as you get here, you have to change your game. It's a completely different game. The speed of it, and then so many other little minute factors. It's a completely different game. You got to lower your stuff as you keep going up in levels. So the wooden bat, aluminum bat, I think it's I think people like where the game was at. I think in 2009 when the bats were getting too hot, I think they cooled them down in 2011. Yeah. And then we went through a little dead ball, and then in 2015 they lowered the seams closer to a major league ball. So you got bats and you also got balls. We used to have a big old seam on that ball, and guys could really rip some breaking balls. And when they deadened those bats, man, it was a great time to be a pitching coach. That's probably how I got really established in my career, is when they deadened those bats and they had them high seams. That was a 4-year run. It was 2011, 12, 13, 14. Our team had the second ERA over 4 years out of 300 ball clubs, and it was fun. And then Jack Leggett over at Clemson, old buddy. I love Jack, done some USA baseball stuff with him. They went round and round with how to make it happen, and they lowered the seams of the ball. So there's something to do. And when my dad said, you don't understand what's going on and you can't figure it out, just start with money. So there's got to be something to do with money here that we're going to stay with these aluminum bats and never go to wood. And then we've been fighting, right on the edge there of like getting and we really didn't deaden the bats. All we did was implied the rule that had already been there.
Yeah.
That's what humans do too, is humans keep trying to find a way to make it better. So they come out with a new bat every year, and those things just started getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And they just left the law. So all they didn't really dumb the bats back down. All they did was everybody that was kind of getting away from it, they just enforced the law that was already there and got everybody back in check and back in line. And now we have compression tests. An umpire will come and certify each bat before a series starts. And they'll do a compression test and a ring test where they'll slide a donut through it and see if it gets all the way through. And then they'll put a compression test, PSI, looks like a $6 pump for a bike or something like that. I don't know how. Everybody says we're testing, and it looks like we're testing with a tomato can. But nonetheless, they got to pass a test before these bats are allowed to play. And that lower seam absolutely gave some benefit back in 15 to the hitters. And so I'll just go with my dad's strategy. There's something back there to do with money that's going to keep us from ever looking for the foreseeable future that I can tell that we'll keep swinging these aluminum bats.
Well, if I'm a VP of marketing at Yellowwood, I'm thinking there's a sponsorship opportunity there, to kind of at least get the SEC teams using wooden bats with a big Yellowwood logo on them or something. Even though they don't use pine, it's a different kind of wood.
Pressure treated pine, Billy. Don't forget that.
that would
that's a
slow
great
that
idea.
bat down, no doubt about it.
Hey, I would be with you. I'd be in full support if you. That'd be a great flag for you to pick up and wave for us.
There you go.
Coach, just another question before we go. Like typical, what advice would you give to, people out there that have got young kids, 7-8-year-old boys that want to get into baseball? And I know what Dr. Andrews says when we have him on the show, and he is your team doctor, the Andrews Orthopedic Group. I'm sure Dr. Benton Emblem from St. Vincent's is part of the rotation, but you have the best medical staff. And you've mentioned when high school recruits and their parents are there on campus, you love to introduce them and tell them Dr. Andrews will be our medical director working with us. But you see, and I see it, and I've got 2 boys and 2 girls, from 22 to 34. But you see these kids out there playing 70 plus games when they're 10 years old. I don't know how their bodies are going to hold up. What would you say would be the best advice to make them have the best chance to have a long, healthy as possible career?
I was in Morristown, New Jersey 2 nights ago, Del Barton High School. Morristown, New Jersey is, there's a lot of places in the South that are famous for the Civil War. That was Morristown, New Jersey is famous for the Revolutionary stuff and earlier. And I was talking to a group of parents, high school parents, because Anthony Volpe, who may challenge to be the Yankees shortstop this year, is from Del Barton High School. And Al Leiter, his son Jack, that was a great player at Vanderbilt that's marching his way to the big leagues right now, is from Del Barton High School. So it was an amazing room of parents for me to be in a very successful, one of our most successful high schools in America. Is the reason why I took the opportunity to be with them a couple of nights ago. And you got to make it fun for your son, number one, because if he's 7 or 8, you still want him to have the same passion or for that to have grown when he's 18. So for those 10 or 11 years, you better make sure that fun is injected first. There's safety. There's the Pitch Smart guidelines. PitchSmart.com is always a good place to go. That was led by Dr. Andrews nationwide to put some guidelines in there. We started it with USA Baseball, and now it's pretty much enacted in every state for high school baseball. So if you throw this many pitches and you go and look at the grid, and it's really sensitive to age. So it's got 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and then it's got high school, and then it has collegiate, and it has professional, and it has all these different levels of amateur baseball, especially of age to pitches to required rest. All those things are listed in Pitch Smart guidelines. So, hey, is that the end all be all? Because we're all different, right? I might have more capacity to throw more pitches in an outing than you do, or vice versa. And so some guys are really good for 25 pitches, and they're pretty lousy. some guys are diesel engines and they're just getting good at pitch 30. So you have to learn the individual. But these guidelines are a good place to start for safety. And then the last piece, the third piece is, man, let them play everything. This is like tread on a tire. So if all you do is the one specialized sport right there and you keep doing it year round, you're going to have some challenges with tread on your tire. When you're playing different sports, your brain is still learning how to compete. You're still learning those features of competition, but maybe your body's being used a little bit different and you're not competing or running that tread off the tire quite as much.
Yeah. Coach, if you can, we got Guy May, Biddy and Bo Coffee in Auburn. His brother, Joe May, has a question for you. I want to ask, he's got a serious question. If you can hang on just through the break for like a couple of minutes. When we come back, I'd like to get your answer because what you just said was profound and my phone is lighting up. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Thompson, last question again. The May family, it's the May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport since 1964. I went to school with Waller, went to school with Guy at Auburn. And of course, you've been to Biddy and Bo's. Now their brother, Joe, lives in Tuscaloosa. Last question for you. He says, Coach, how do you replace a Sonny DeShira and how can you beat his walk-up music?
With like between 2 and 5 people is how you replace Sonny DeShira. No, we got a great one. We got a Kansas transfer, Cooper McMurray. He's awesome. Those are big shoes to fill, and he feels the Sonny thing because all our fans are talking about Sonny. And I just told Cooper, I'm like, won't you just be Cooper? And you're going to have a left fielder that's going to help you. And you're going to have others in our lineup. Rambush was a big loss, too, at third base. And then go over to Brody Moore, who only made 4 errors at shortstop. I thought was the best defensive shortstop I've seen played in my 2 decades plus in the SEC. But Sonny's a big one now. And because there was some extra value, there was some synergy associated with Sonny. He was bigger than life, and that walk-up just made everybody feel good. And it struck a chord, and it didn't just strike a chord with us. My buddy Mike Clement, the great third base coach over at Ole Miss, I saw SEC Baseball put something out 3-4 days ago and said, man, we're going to miss Sonny's walk-up song. And Mike Clement's like, hey, it's a challenge for every SEC baseball player to try to come up with a walk-up song as good as Sonny had. And it's like, we're going to see some crazy stuff in walk-up songs this year because everybody's chasing Sonny. It's like he injected a new meaning into walk-up songs. And so everybody in the SEC, every student athlete's got their work cut out for them.
It'll be fun to watch, but I love that answer about the guys you got coming in. Coach, last thing, let people know how they can follow you. And if they want to contribute money and their time or both to Auburn baseball, how do they do it?
Yeah, the easiest is Butch Thompson at auburn.edu. And yes, we'll take whatever you got. If you got something good and you want to give us something, absolutely reach out and just follow our program and all the social media stuff. Follow the SEC if you're a fan of another team. This brand's never been better. Amateur baseball and the SEC has never been better. And it's going to be real interesting to see all the teams this year. so many teams are ranked. I've seen us preseason from 17 to 300. So nobody knows. The coaches don't even know what we got. It'll be real interesting as we started official team practice yesterday, all of us. We marched 3 weeks. These players start making the lineup out, and you start, trying to sharpen your axe, getting ready for the season. It's going to be a fun ride in 2023, and we'll see what it's good to get the hype going and all the experts going, but when this dust settles, we'll be down to lining up, and the score will take care of itself here shortly.
Yeah, well, there's no better game, Billy would agree, to attend in person than a baseball game on any level, and there's no greater ambassador than Coach Butch Thompson. The suburb of Amory, Mississippi, Coontail Road.
Hey, I got
Damn
one more.
right.
Did you see my coffee cup this morning?
Oh, there we go. Love it.
This was
Love it.
of course you're my favorite show, but this was always my favorite.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, hey, one thing about when Coach Dye was on shows, my friends Bill Cameron and Dan Peck there at Auburn, the drive, it was hard to hit those breaks with Coach Dye. When he was telling a story, it's just he's on a roll, man. The Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, forget it. He's on a roll. I mean, nobody told a story like him.
Well, I was scared to death the first time I was on the show because I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know where we're about to go or what was about to happen. But what an incredible man. I miss him for sure.
Oh, God, every day. But, hey, man, that legacies live on forever through the people that they impact. And he a lot, and you the same. And we're blessed to have you. And let's do this again next week. Have a great weekend. And I cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, let's go play some ball. War Eagle guys, see y'all.
All right, War Eagle. Thank you. All right, man, you can't get better. If I was a student athlete, it would be fun playing for a guy like Coach Butch Thompson. And so people are saying, what was Sonny D's walk-up song? It was, the tune was really cool. I mean, he'd walk up, the crowd would go wild in Auburn or in a road game. That's what you love about baseball. And obviously, there are going to be comparisons, Billy, to Babe Ruth, the big guy. Sonny weighed at least 200 pounds. Yeah, I mean, give or take a few, but what an athlete, man. What an athlete. And that's a great ambassador for baseball. Billy, again, Braves fans, I know so many of them, and Cardinals fans, but Braves fans, they're Bravesologists. And the interest in baseball, I think, is being fueled by what's happening in college. Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, coachsafely.org, is going to join us. Just texted me in just a couple of minutes. He's finishing up a project right now. But, Billy, Atlanta Braves, you pick your venue across the country. But what they did with the Battery there in Cobb County, it's unreal. The tax revenue and everything they get from that.
It's phenomenal. When they were making the plans to do it, obviously that piece of land had to be negotiated in secret because, there's not a lot of 200-acre parcels, laying around in Atlanta that could hold the size of a ballpark or whatever the size of that thing was. But, they had the unfortunate timing of negotiating with the city of Atlanta around the same time that Mercedes Stadium was being negotiated with the Falcons. So to finance the Falcons, Mercedes Stadium, the city of Atlanta created a hotel motel tax that would, help fund that. And then right on the heels of that, the Braves, said, hey, we need to make a change. And it wasn't driven necessarily by what the Falcons were doing. It just was timing was what it was. And the city of Atlanta with the old Turner Field owned the parking lot. And the Braves were saying, hey, we had this plan, this vision for the Battery. We'd like to develop that and make it kind of a venue, a destination unto itself. Even in the off season, people would come and go to the bars and restaurants, exactly what the Battery is today. But the city of Atlanta, in a remarkably short-sighted, moment, said, we're not giving up that parking revenue. We own the parking lot. We're not doing that. And the Braves, unbeknownst to the city and everybody else, had that piece of land in Cobb County kind of already negotiated and said, all right, we're going to go do something different. And caught everybody off guard. And, the Atlanta paper really beat them up about it. They only moved 11 miles away. It's not like they moved 100 miles, but the Atlanta paper, the narrative that they took was, you're moving out of the city of Atlanta. You're moving away from the fan base. This is not a good thing. And what the Braves did, which was brilliant, and it kind of snuffed that whole narrative out immediately, was they printed in the paper a heat map of where their season ticket holders were.
Yeah.
And they pointed out that that stadium is in the geographic heart of where the season ticket, the paying customers, basically, that come to the games, not the people that watch on TV like a lot of us do, but the people that come and spend $3,000 a year on season tickets. The majority of them live within 2 or 3 miles of where the Battery and the current Braves Stadium is today. And that, enough said. I mean, if you're running a business, and a Major League Baseball team is a business, moving closer to the heart of your customer base is good business.
Yeah.
And that's what they chose to do. And the traffic hasn't been as bad. There was, people predicted doom and gloom, but now you and I have been to a number of games there. Yeah. You can get to the stadium 4 or 5 different ways. Where Turner Field was located in downtown Atlanta, you had, all of that traffic on the interstate. You had people coming and going from the airport. You had I-20 close by. So you had a kind of an intersection of 3 major interstates, plus Grady Hospital, plus the airport. And every time you would go to the game, there was a choke point where everybody coming from the north side of town to get to a game, was faced with horrific traffic, 80 games a year. Think about it. It's not like football where it's 8 home games like with the Falcons. This is 80 games a year, and the traffic was horrible. So when they made that move, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and it did. And speaking of cities with traffic problems, Kevin, Birmingham, I love Birmingham, but the roads, the interstates and all are designed for a city about a fourth that size. And if you don't hit it, I've got it timed perfectly when I leave Memphis to go down to Auburn. But if you hit during rush hour, once you go through Mountain Brook to get up past Chelsea up on the hill, it can be an hour and a half or 2 hours of just absolute gridlock. And, Atlanta, same thing. But man, the bottom line is you look at all these cities, you better have a long-term plan, because people are pouring into Atlanta. They're pouring into Birmingham and the surrounding communities. What is Hoover now? 85, 90,000 people. The Metro Birmingham area just keeps expanding. But Kevin, look, thanks for taking time to join us. We had Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson on talking about college baseball, Major League Baseball and all. And he mentioned something about, I want to get off a few minutes here about the coachsafely.org. He mentioned Pitch Safely, and Dr. Andrews is involved in that. So are you working with college coaches as well as the high school, middle school, and little league coaches? Because your message is so important. I would think nothing is off the table.
Well, good morning, Rob. Good morning, Billy. You're absolutely right, Rob, that baseball was, I think, one of the sports that helped motivate Dr. Andrews to get involved with Jack Crow and form Coach Safely, because Dr. Andrews has been involved going back a long time with Little League Baseball with Glenn Fleissig, Dr. Glenn Fleissig. They really came up with the idea of pitch counts to try to prevent overuse injuries in young arms. And the Coach Safely training course does have one module about overuse injuries.
Yeah.
And we see it a lot in baseball. We see, young people who will, pitch for a school team. They'll pitch for a travel team. They'll play almost year round. They feel like they've got to specialize in that sport younger and younger. That's not good. Playing multiple sports, everyone whether it's college coaches, pro coaches, will all tell you they love guys that play multiple sports. It also gives your arm a chance to rest. If you're a pitcher, for example, if you do something else, and also if you play other positions. So there's a whole science to this about pitch counts and overuse injuries, again, particularly with young arms. And that's one of the things that Coach Safely was invented to help educate coaches about at the youth level. And we do, Rob, we work with different college coaches in different sports. We try to get them on board. We've had a large number of different coaches that have supported and endorsed Coach Safely, starting with Nick Saban, Bill Clark. Bill Clark, the former UAB football coach, is a vice president of the Coach Safely Foundation. Bruce Pearl has been a prominent supporter of ours. And I could go down the list of a lot of other names, and we probably need to reach out to more to get them involved, because they understand how important the subject of safety is from a baseball perspective. And usually from a baseball perspective, you think of your throwing arms. And I can tell you, as I was a young pitcher way back in the day, and probably threw a curveball earlier than I should have. It was a great weapon in Little League, but when that mound went from 46 feet back to 60 feet in high school, it was tough on my arm. And I've had two, one with my throwing arm, one with my other arm. I've had two rotator cuff surgeries with a torn rotator cuff and a torn labrum, and one where the surgeon said we had to pull up your biceps and reattach it like a window shade because it had become detached. And let me tell you, the rehab from shoulder surgery is brutal. So I advise doing everything possible to keep your young pitchers safe as possible, so they don't ever have to go through that.
No, I would agree. I mean, anytime you pull a shoulder muscle, just sleeping and rolling over in bed and catching your arm on one of the sheets, it pulls you the other way. It's excruciating pain. I mean, that's why you look at the football players and professional athletes when they get older. So many of them, they're not real mobile. And the coachsafely.org message, something's getting out there, because I don't know if you've talked to Steve Shaw, and I want to get him on. He was the head coordinator of NCAA officials. I saw way fewer targeting calls this past season, Kevin and Billy, in college football than I can remember. Would you agree?
I don't know the numbers on that. And I personally haven't spoken to Steve. I know Steve. Haven't spoken to him about Coach Safely. I imagine Jack Crow, our founder and chairman, has. I would be surprised if he hadn't. Mm-hmm. But you think about just going back a decade and how people are now conscious of head injuries. And not just in football. Soccer, there's an issue in soccer with especially again with young people with headers. And I know some organizations, they have restricted or prohibited headers, below a certain age, which is smart. As you're 8, 10 years old, your brain's still developing, your muscles and bones are still developing. So those are things. It's not just we talk about it in relation to football, but it's not just football. Concussions can happen in any sport. My older son, the last game of his 7th grade baseball season, stole second base, went in head first, shortstop's knee flashed across the bag, hits him right here, pops his helmet off. He seemed fine in the moment. He stayed in the game. He leads off second. He dives on third base, doesn't score, comes in at the end of the inning. The coach immediately, after he looks at him, comes out of the dugout, comes straight to me and says, "You need to come check on him. He doesn't look good." Yeah. He had a concussion. He had a serious concussion. He was, for about a month, he missed almost a month of school. It was the end of the school year, missed almost a month of school, had to sit in a dark room, couldn't play video games, couldn't watch TV. That's a tough thing to ask a 12, 13-year-old to do, and it affected him. It affected him in different ways for some time. So concussions are no joke. That's why when we talk about these things, it's so important for us to say what a concussion is. A traumatic brain injury. Yeah. That is what it is. It's not getting your bell rung. It's not getting cobwebs. When you use phrases like that, which we've used forever, we've all done it. Yeah. It minimizes.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewitt and Dunn.
Yeah, Kevin, curiously, traumatic brain injury. That's both of my wife and I both, and I think everybody's listening. Span.
Well, think of it, and just to be clear, I'm not a medical professional. I've learned an awful lot working with Coach Safely and talking to people like Dr. Andrews, Dr. Jimmy Robinson from the University of Alabama, just to name two prominent members of our medical advisory board. Drew Ferguson, our CEO, was a longtime certified athletic trainer who was Gene Bartow's first trainer at UAB. Mm-hmm. So Drew is integral to what we do. It is, imagine, your skull, your
Kevin,
brain.
Hold that thought, because we're going to
Sure.
go to a break. We accidentally, the stopwatch, Mildred always tells me, "Oh, time for the break." So we're going to take a quick break. Be right back. Kevin Scarbinsky, Billy Roberts on Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Kevin Scarbinsky, you were on a roll, and I was going to say something, too, about head injuries, concussions, and all. Again, I'm not a doctor either, but one of our new sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis, one of our new sponsors, and Camp has bought 3 of these gyms in Memphis, and they're 25 weight benches with all that and 25 boxing setups where you're practicing. You're not banging into each other per se, but you're getting out there, and they're trying to do that. It's a 45-minute workout. It's intense, but think about boxing and the number of people that boxed for a long time, what they were like later in life, along the lines of what you're saying. And then I want to go after that. I know Billy's got questions, and I do, and I've got a lot of them coming in from listeners.
Okay. And when we went to break, Rob, just basically think of your brain moving, your brain moving inside your skull. When there's a sudden stop or a sudden change of direction, sometimes that brain will move and it will slam into your skull. That creates a concussion. It doesn't have to, from what I understand from doctors, it doesn't necessarily have to slam into the skull to create a concussion, but just a sudden movement, a sudden stop, that kind of jarring, if you will. As I said, the shortstop's knee hitting my son's forehead as he's stealing second base head first, that kind of thing. Heading a soccer ball. It can happen in any number of ways. We typically think of it in football. We think of head-to-head contact, which is obviously something we're trying to educate and legislate out of the game as much as possible, because those two things go together. Education is just as important as the legislation. And so, whether like with the targeting rule, for example, I mean, that's what I mean when I talk about legislation. So yeah, it is serious, but it is very encouraging that we are talking about this subject more than ever. And anyone who says, well, we're making football soft. Football's not what it used to be. It's not. Go out there. You go out there and play a high school football game. Go out there and play a college football game. Go out there and play an NFL game and tell me that football is soft. No, what we're trying to do is make sure we keep playing football. That's right. We want to make sure young men continue to play football. Now, again, that's a parent's decision. If you want to play flag football up to a certain age, hey, that can be a really good decision for you. You want to play tackle football at a younger age, that's a parent's decision. But be educated when you make those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And Billy, I know you have questions with Kevin.
Yeah, I think that the point you're making about the parents, getting them engaged and understanding what the risks are is crucial. I mean, right now we all have been following Tua with the Dolphins. Apparently he's still in protocol now. The season's over for him, but he's still suffering from concussion symptoms. You said they can last a month or more. I think he had 3 concussions during the year is what they're saying. And,
it's interesting, Billy, and not to interrupt, but just on that point, he had 2 that they admitted were concussions. A third that we suspect was a concussion, but it wasn't the first one, if you will, wasn't formally ruled a concussion, or one of those was not formally ruled a concussion. But common sense tells you, we can't diagnose a concussion. This is something important too, Billy. if I'm a commentator, working for Fox or CBS or NBC or ESPN covering a football game, I shouldn't say that player sustained a concussion unless a medical professional tells me. It's not my job to sustain it. You could say those are signs and symptoms of a concussion. When you see a player stagger, for example, get up, have a hit, and then just kind of stagger. And we saw Tua with the way Tua's posturing after the one vicious hit was a perfect example of that. So I'm sorry, you were making a good point.
I think you're right on. So, the parents obviously need to be educated. And I know that's what Coach Safely is probably the primary, conduit of information is from medical professionals to parents to make informed choices. But I think all of us can remember, I think it was Troy Aikman, kind of at the peak of his career, had a lot of concussions and retired a little early, right? I mean, because he was going through what Tua is going through now. And I think, if I remember correctly, what he was saying is if you're prone to concussions, you're going to keep getting them more and more. If you've had a couple, you're going to keep getting them with lesser and less violent hits. So if there are certain people that are more prone to getting them than others, and if you've had one or two, maybe at a young age, by the time you become a professional athlete, you're predisposed to having it. And of course, we all know that later on in life, 40s and 50s, these people that have played football for a long time, they have really tough circumstances. Their diminished capacity is just unbelievable to watch. So I think, an organization like Coach Safely trying to get hold of parents, because parents are maniacs. We've seen all of the parents that are driving these kids. The kids themselves are obviously motivated and self-directed and want to participate, but the kids that are really over training and playing more than they should, that's the parents, because somebody's got to drive you around all these games before you're old enough to drive. And so I think that what you're doing is great, and I've got firsthand experience with parents of that I know that are just ridiculous about, trying to think their kid's going to be the next, great football player or baseball player. And the odds are they're not. Sports for kids need to be fun. And if they're so fortunate to even play, college sports, that's a miracle. Forget professional, right? So I think that's where it has to start.
Billy, you are spot on. I want to stand up and applaud everything you just said. And education is the key, and it starts with the parents, and that's why we encourage not just youth coaches, but youth sports parents to take the Coach Safely course as well, because for that reason, so what to look for if your son or daughter comes home from a practice and they seem a little off. And kids are notoriously tight-lipped about things. They won't necessarily share everything with you. So, but if you know the things to look for, and again, speaking specifically of concussions here, what are those signs and symptoms, and you can look for it as a parent. And I think you raised another good point there, Billy, about what are youth sports about? What should they be about? Are we trying to grow the next Bo Jackson, the next Cam Newton? Is that what we're really doing? Or when they're 6 and 7 and 8, 9, 10, or are we trying to give them something to do that's fun? They can be out there with their friends. They're improving their physical fitness. We're establishing habits at a young age where fitness is part of your life, which is what we all want, which is great. Some of us fall away as we get older, but we should always be physically fitness and physically active. That's just good from a health standpoint. Think of the money that's spent on healthcare in this country. It's astronomical, and it's not. It's only going up, for a lot of reasons. So this is a public health problem that at heart that we're trying to help to deal with. And it starts with educating parents at a young age. Get those kids out there, keep them active. Because when the kids get hurt, what's fun about being on a team, but you're on crutches and you have to go watch, but you can't play, or you have a concussion, you can't even go to the field. You got to stay home for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. So we really, it's almost like trying to change a culture, if you will, of youth sports. Set a standard for safety, but also let's remember, they are kids. Let's try to make it as fun as possible.
Yeah, and I know, and Kevin, 14 years coaching cross country and track and field, about over 600 kids, including my 3 for a 9-year run. Bottom line, the kids want you to raise that bar, but in those kind of sports, you get Now, again, I think it's Ochkin slaughters and severs the kids, the bones. Look, you're 13, 14-year-old kids, 12, 13, 14. You have to recognize that. Now, having my own kids, I did. And also I talk to friends that are doctors. I hunt with friends. I got a great friend, Rob Pickering, great orthopedic surgeon, Ortho One, and sat in the duck blind with him a lot and learned a lot about this stuff. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I know the warning signs. But I tell you who the MVPs are, the conduits to this, is the moms that are picking the kids up from practice and taking them to practice. They'll confide. I mean, my dad's 94 and I'm not scared of him. He's just, he's my dad and he still lifts weights at 94 and rides an exercise bike. And
Go Dad.
My point is you're going to confide in your mom. It's easier to do. And when you get in that car after practice as a boy, as a male, you don't want to sound weak or soft, but they got to be able to pick up on those signs to know, hey, we need to go to the doctor. But I can assure you, I would never support anything that's soft or lowering the bar or anything. And coachsafely.org is everything that I do believe in. It's like, if we want the future, because go back to 1906, and Tony Barnhart talked about this on Norman Jetmanson's great film documentary, Sewanee 1899, unrivaled.org. And by the way, February 2nd in Memphis at 6 p.m. at Hyde Chapel at MUS in East Memphis, they're going to have a premiere on the big screen. I'm going to that. It's a great story. But Tony Barnhart talked about in 1906, 19 players died in college football. And the Georgia governor and the legislature convened. They were going to get rid of football until the mother of the players stood up and said, we don't need to get rid of football. That's not what he would have wanted. I'm giving the Cliff Note version, but let's find a way to make it better. And that's when Teddy Roosevelt and the NCAA came about. Not that they're perfect in everything, but we've cut those numbers way down since then. So if you think coachsafely.org is about lessening football and making it less of a alpha male culture sport, you're 180 degrees on the opposite end of the spectrum. Go to that dinner. And Kevin, this is an opportunity for you to tell us when the date is, if you got it. But Billy, you and me and Frank Duffy and Maury and Doug Dean, all of us have got to be there and get a table, because that is a must-attend event that Kevin, Jack Crow, Dr. Andrews, Paul Feinbaum, Lou Holtz were there. Everybody is there. It's like being at the Oscars or the Emmys, okay, in that crowd. Although nobody went up on stage and slapped anybody in the face. It was just a great night.
Thank goodness, since I was one of the presenters.
Well, you're a pretty big dude, man. I don't think anybody's going to mess with you.
Well, bigger than I need to be, but at the moment. But speaking of fitness, thank you for that, Rob. We're still honing in on the details of this year's fundraiser. Last year was our inaugural one, as you mentioned, with Lou Holtz and Paul Feinbaum. Appreciate your support of that event.
Love it.
It is a way for us to raise money. We're a nonprofit foundation, and we are trying to educate all youth sports parents, all youth sports coaches to get educated about youth sports injuries. How do we recognize them? And Dr. Andrews, if you ever talk to him, he always makes the point, recognition comes first. All right. You got to be able to recognize an injury before you can deal with it. And then you want to prevent injuries, of course, if you can, and you want to be able to react to them when it's necessary. There's been a lot in the news about sudden cardiac arrest since Damar Hamlin's situation. We have a module for that in Coach Safely. Emergency action plans are so important. Just in general, think about what your youth sports experience is yourself, or maybe with your children. Yeah. It's something, and we were fortunate enough, we never had a serious injury like that. While I coached my kids in baseball and basketball for 10 years. We never had that kind of serious injury, but we did have injuries. So what's the protocol? Does your league, your community park, is there a protocol for if someone collapses, if someone's not breathing? Well, who does what? Who calls 911? Is there an AED? Who goes and retrieves it? Who performs CPR? Are you trained in CPR? Guess what? If you take the Coach Safely course, you'll get the basics on CPR, AED usage, automated external defibrillator, of course, which will help restart your heart. It's really foolproof. Anybody can do it. It tells you, the machine tells you what to do. You just have to know where it is, and the batteries have to be charged. You have to make sure it has fresh batteries. So these things are all important, and they're things that youth sports organizations in particular didn't really think about back in the day.
Yeah.
But they need to think about them because, Damar Hamlin survived because the NFL's emergency medical personnel, they were there, they were trained, they were ready. They knew what to do, and they did it very quickly, and they were able to revive him and bring him back.
Yeah.
That those resources don't necessarily exist even at the high school level, let alone the youth sports level. But the education can exist. The plan can be there. You can know what to do, because sometimes the quicker you act, the better the chance you can save someone. And of course, that's extreme. But there's all degrees of things we can do to keep kids healthy, keep them active. That's the heart of it.
Yeah. Quick question for you. Maybe you know it. I'm going to guess something here. 1951, Shug Jordan becomes head coach at Auburn. Is it true that Dr. Houston from the Houston Clinic over in Columbus, Georgia, who mentored and trained Dr. Andrews, among others, was approached by Dr. Houston and his residents and said, look, we'd like to come to practice and be on the sidelines in the games to treat sports injuries and have an instant impact. And that Coach Jordan referenced, well, I was in combat in World War II, and we had field medics, and they saved a lot of lives. Is that where it all began, or am I just very myopic in my orange and blue glasses?
Well, I've heard that story. I've never really researched it myself, but I do know Dr. Houston was on the cutting edge of sports medicine, having certified athletic trainers present. Now you see on a college sideline, there are, I think, a minimum, you probably have 25 to 30 medical personnel there. You have trainers, you have doctors, you have some places you have a dentist, you might have an orthopedic surgeon, you might have, there's all kinds, so many disciplines are represented. Mm-hmm. And that number increases as you go up the food chain. But there are high schools in Alabama, for example, that don't, because the county doesn't necessarily have EMS services, which is sad to say. Because a lot of these places, certainly the more affluent communities, the Hoovers, the Mountain Brooks, you have an ambulance there. You have EMTs there that if something happens, they can react quickly to help a young person. But every county doesn't have those resources. And so the more we can train the people who are there, who's there every day at practice and games? The coach. Yes. The coach is, especially at the youth level. You're it. You're everything. You're the coach. You're the scheduler. You're the trainer. You're the doctor. You're the first responder. And so you better be educated. You better be trained to know what to do if something happens.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're about to go to a break. Buddy Martin's going to join us here in a second. And when we come back, I want to talk about January 26th, 40 years ago, guys. It's hard to believe Coach Bryant died in January 26, 1983. And I was in school at Auburn. I remember it. We all do. I want to talk about the impact he made and college football, the changes since then. The game is as good as it's ever been. There's NIL, there's the portal and all like that. But what coaches' roles are, I watch a coach like a Josh Heupel, like a Kirby Smart in the pregame warmups. They seem to go up to every player on the field and make connections with them. They get to know them. Great stuff. You cannot beat this stuff. Sidelines, folks, with Kevin Scarbinsky, Billy Roberts, Buddy Martin joining us in a second, and maybe Doug Dean if he's bagged a big deer over in Tyler, Alabama, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
And Monday through Saturday can be heard on great radio stations like Sports Radio 104.7 FM up in Cookeville, Tennessee on the Cumberland Plateau, and Kicks 96.3 Alexander City, Lake Martin, 750 miles of shoreline of Lake Martin, one of the cleanest lakes in America, coming up on the 100th anniversary. Wow, hard to believe. You've even got Kevin and Billy. This is pretty funny. Doug Dean was talking to us when we were down there the weekend of the Auburn LSU game. You got the Auburn side of the lake and, of course, the Alabama side of the lake. What other state in the country can – you think the people in California are like that? Hell, they lose a game at Southern Cal or UCLA. They get over it by the time they get back to their car in the parking lot. You know?
Yeah, then they go out for sushi, right?
It's right. But
not to use a cliche or anything.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
a stereotype.
But I do like sushi, man. I tell you, we got some great ones over here. But I will say, going back to Coach Bryant, and you think about these men that coached back then, Coach Bryant, Coach Jordan, Coach Butch, Coach Dooley, Coach Vaught, Coach Nealon, just they were just tough. And Gene Stallings reminded people a lot of that. And I want to get your thoughts. And you came down, I believe, after Coach Bryant had passed away, but that legacy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger with time.
It certainly does. I read a quote this week about the 40th anniversary of Coach Bryant's passing, and I thought it was so appropriate. And it said he touched so many lives of people he never met, and that's when you've really made an impact. When you've had a positive impact on someone's life that you've never met, you've never spoken to, you've never been in the same room with, but you had an influence on them in a good way. And what an incredible way to describe the influence, obviously, that Paul Bear Bryant had. It was interesting because I grew up in Pennsylvania, as you know. I was a Penn State fan because I lived there, and I was a Notre Dame fan because I was raised Catholic and the Pope decrees it. And
that's right.
And so I'll never forget. I moved right after high school. My dad's company had moved to a small town in South Alabama, and I was enrolled to go to Penn State, but I didn't want to be that far away from my family because I had a younger brother. So I moved to Ozark, Alabama, right after graduating from high school. And if I didn't know what the word culture shock meant before that, I certainly did afterwards. And so, Coach Bryant, obviously Alabama, they were at the height of their powers. They beat I will never. I had other reasons now to have not be a fan of Joe Paterno necessarily, but Joe Paterno was our Bear Bryant, if you will, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And we were so disgusted that despite gave the advice, Marty Lyons or Barry Krause said you better pass on. They were at the goal line stand.
Yeah, 1978. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never. I didn't want to forgive Joe Paterno for being so hard-headed to try to run into the middle of the line and getting stuffed at the goal line and losing that national championship game in the Sugar Bowl. But, I was actually in college at Troy when Coach Bryant passed. And it was amazing to me. I'd never been around him. I'd never met him. That was before I became a sports journalist. But it was amazing to me the way people reacted, the love that people had, the admiration that people had for that man, and then watching on television, the funeral procession down the interstate. I mean, it's still one of the most incredible social occasions, cultural occasions you'll ever witness that touched an entire state the way it did.
Yeah, it really did. And just 40 years later, you think about that, and you just the long shadows of these great men that came up from pretty damn humble beginnings. Fordyce, Arkansas, one of 12 children. And, he knew about Alabama because he listened to the Rose Bowl in 1925. Alabama in the third quarter was down 19-7, came back and won 20-19. and that changed Southern college football, put it on top of the college football world nearly 60 years ago. And the South has been doing everything they can to maintain that number one position, and it works. But Buddy Martin, GatorbaitMedia.com, is with us. Doug Dean, AU Dose Birmingham, up in the deer stand or out of the deer stand, is with us. Billy Roberts over in Brookhaven, Kevin Scarbinsky in Birmingham. And Buddy, we were just remembering Coach Bryant, Kevin talking about it, growing up in Ozark, his senior year of high school now.
Moving to Ozark, not growing up in Ozark.
Yeah,
growing up in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Get that right, Rob.
I know that, growing up in Pottsville, but moved there, I guess, his senior year, but went to Troy in Ozark, the Wiregrass. But, Buddy, you were around Coach Bryant. You've got some incredible stories, and then I've got several questions that have already come in for you from some folks that used to live in New York that remember you.
Well, I'm privileged to be in this group. I don't know if I got much to add. Everything I have is going to be olds. But I do have a couple of Bryant stories, which, by the way, I watched Feinbaum. His accidental show in Bear Bryant turned out to be remarkable. He didn't even plan it, and he got all these calls about all these stories. And some of them were genuine. Some of them were former players, not many. And here's the thing about Bryant. I'm just going to say it right now and get it out there. I mean, all due respect to Nick Saban. You can call him GOAT wherever you want to. There will never be anybody like Bear Bryant again, ever. And I'm sorry, but it's like, hold my beer, Nick. Nick, the guy you're talking about, was not just a football coach. He's almost like a fictitious character, like a Paul Bunyan. I mean, the story of him wrestling a bear and all that sort of stuff. I can't say that I knew Bear Bryant, but I did, in fact, cover some of his games. I saw some early 60s games there with Spurrier. I almost beat him as a sophomore in Tuscaloosa. Watched his great team in the Sugar Bowl against, that Notre Dame game. Everybody who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s knows about Bear Bryant. He was the iconic coach, and it still is to many people. If you don't believe it, and Kevin, I know you're a guest on that show a lot. Listen to the people, their voices when they talk about Bear Bryant in awe, but not just in football. You hear stories about him, and look, Bear Bryant was no saint. I mean, look, I can tell you a couple of stories about him being stone drunk, like many coaches were, and whatever. There's nobody perfect. Bear Bryant was about the most iconic college football figure, and as someone said yesterday, even in all sports that I can ever remember. And what I just have are a couple of snapshots, and I'm not going to take up the time telling all the stories. When you were in the room with Bryant, you felt his presence. You felt his presence in a way, that I don't know anybody I was ever around in sports was. I was there a couple of times with him in a somewhat informal setting. One was, I've told the story many times about being at Silver Springs to the old SEC coaches meetings before SEC media days. And we were sitting at the table playing poker, and Alf Van Hoos, Kevin, was at that poker table with me, and others. And Mary Harmon Bryant was playing poker. And all of a sudden, in the doorway appeared this massive figure. He looked like he was 6'9", and in his bare feet, by the way, smoking a Chesterfield, standing in the doorway, and it was Bear. And you knew it was Bear, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, that's him. I mean, you'd never forget that scene again. And then the other times I saw him and heard about him and whatever, I mean, there was just nobody like him, nobody. And so when you compare Nick Saban and Bear Bryant, I guess you could make a case for Nick, all due respect. But how do you say who was better, Elvis or the Beatles? I mean, how do you say it? I guess it's whatever era you were in at that time. But I just got to say that it was such an effusive conversation. The enthusiasm, the backstories, the anecdotes they told about Bryant. And Kevin, you probably heard some of it, were amazing. And when you talk about anybody else in sports, I mean, I don't care if it's Tiger Woods, whoever it may be, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, whatever. Nothing resonates like Bear Bryant. That's why he may win 100 games at Alabama, but he'll never be better than Bear Bryant.
Well,
as you were talking, buddy, it just something occurred to me, and I never had the privilege to be around him. I came into the business a couple of years later after he passed, Never met him, but again, obviously talked to so many people about him that played for him, that coached with him. And it just struck me, all the years that I knew Pat Dye and got to know Pat Dye and spent time sitting with him, talking one-on-one in his office. And we would talk about a lot of things beyond football. And he talked about Bryant. I never heard him call him anything but Coach Bryant.
That was it. You didn't call him anything but Coach.
He didn't call him Bear.
Paul.
He didn't call him Paul.
No.
He called him Coach Bryant.
That's it.
That was different.
It's like the title. It's like saying Pope or, whatever, Mr. President, Coach Bear Bryant. You're absolutely right. And I could tell you 1,000 stories. I will just tell you this little short one real fast. Remember Ray Perkins? Okay. When I was at SEC Skywriters 100 years ago, we were all sitting there under the tower, and 25 of us, including Alf and others. Bryant was up at the tower, and he whistled, and there was like 3 pods of players on different fields, and they would like change fields and go back and forth. And at one point they said, "Send Ray over here." Ray Perkins had been over the offensive side, and and you could tell when he ran across the field. It was like when he wrote, you knew he was special. Went over and played defense. Bryant was showing him off for the SEC Skywriters right then and there. And picking another guy from Petal, Mississippi, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So spin the clock forward. And he became a coach, and he was an offensive coordinator and whatever. And lo and behold, Ray became the head coach of the New York Giants while I was the sports editor of the Daily News. And I spoke Southern, which was an advantage, right? And I want to say that we got to be kind of friends. I understood Ray a little bit. He understood me a little bit. And one day I was at his house in Franklin Lakes. We're barbecuing steaks on just the 2 of us and our wives, smoking a cigar. And I said to him, "Ray, what are you going to do when Coach Bryant retires and they call you to be the head coach? It'll only be 3 or 4 of you, Pat Dye and what I named him." And he said, "I'm going to go." I said, "You what?" He said, "Off the record, I'm going to go." Well, that says it all right there. And he did go. It didn't work out great, but you knew, like Bear said, when Mama calls, you come running.
Yeah. Doug Dean, jump in here because and that's incredible insight, buddy. I've never heard that. But Doug Dean out of the deer stand on a Saturday round table.
Good morning, guys. Rob, I got to say, and Scarbo will love this. Is this some kind of practical joke? You drag an Auburn man out of the woods to on a painful look back to the great Coach Bear Bryant? No, yes. I appreciate Buddy's story, but in all seriousness, being a Birmingham native and the Dean family going back 100 years, and U.S. Steel management types in the family tree, you can all appreciate how miserable my childhood was as a young Auburn man, from like 4th grade all the way through John Carroll High School, home of the great Pat Sullivan. Never beat Alabama, never won an Iron Bowl, the Auburn Tigers, that is. So Coach Bryant earned every bit of that. And the thing that I really, really appreciate Buddy putting in perspective, and Alabama fans, like any fan base, can do whatever they want. They can have whatever opinions they wish. But I think you should reject the premise of the very question: which is the greater Alabama legendary coach, Bear Bryant or Nick Saban? Both, and not either or. That would be my answer.
Good answer. And by the way, I just remember this: when Norm Carlson was the SID at Auburn, yes, he was before he went to Florida for 30 years. Yeah. He was coaching, and when Coach Jordan was there, and riding around in a cart on a Sunday or Monday or whatever, and Alabama and Auburn had both won that day. Big one. Back when Alabama and Auburn both were really good, which happens to us sometimes. And Norm, being a congenial guy, said, "Coach Jordan, isn't it great that both Alabama and Auburn won over the weekend?" And boy, Ralph Jordan blew up. And you never see Coach Jordan blew up. And he said, "Norm," and he said, "ain't a damn," except he didn't say damn, "ain't a damn thing good for Alabama that's good for Auburn." That's how it was.
I've never understood people say, "Well, that's not very classy, you not pulling for Alabama or not pulling for Georgia." And Buddy, most fans, if they're honest, I mean, serious deep South fans, the state of Alabama would tell you they buy into the axiom: anything bad that happens for Alabama or Georgia is automatically good for Auburn. Maybe it's not classic, but I think that's the fandom, at least from a sports hate, not a real hate, but a sports hate point of view. And I got to say, on behalf, I bet, of the whole SEC, Rob and Scarbo, Billy and Buddy, that we can only wish, shall we say, that the aftermath, the succession of following Coach Saban is as disruptive and chaotic as it was following Coach Bryant.
That's we're all hanging in there hoping for that.
That's gonna be a tough act to follow. I mean, Kevin and everybody on this round table, you think about that you don't even want to go there, but I'm with you, Coach Bryant, Coach Jordan, Coach Vaught. I mean, God, Coach Vaught lived to be almost 100, and a lot of people knew him. And just these kind of coaches, you know, they were real, and most of them. And Nick Saban came from pretty humble beginnings, but they're just. The bottom line is, maybe it's because I think Buddy and Kevin, y'all have referenced this before. We didn't have the 24/7 media coverage cycle where it's just all the time. When you heard about these coaches, it was these rare glimpses. And I know from Coach Bryant's good friend up here, Logan Young, and Logan III, he would come to Memphis a lot. And they would sneak in the side door to a little VIP room at Big John Grazzani's restaurant at Park and Airways. Great Italian restaurant. Grazzani family, been in that business about 120 years in Memphis, came to Memphis a lot. And they'd end up going out after that, and Cedric would take them. Maybe they'd end up at Alex's Tavern, run into Mike Fracchia. I mean, he loved to come up here, and he would go down in the off season to Palm Beach to their house. And he was the only person in the world, was Logan's grandmother, would say, you get outside with the rest of the farm animals and smoke those damn cigarettes, but not in my house. How many people could say that to Coach Bryant? But you know, that's an interesting take on it, and just the closeness relationships that he had with a number of people. And we need those kind of coaches, and we need great sports writers like Buddy and like Kevin and Doug. What you do with the AU Dose is exemplary, but we never, ever should stop producing and mentoring the young sports writer generation, because if we don't have it, we don't have these stories, Kevin.
Well, that is a good point, Rob. I want to reflect on something you just said, though. I think
and hold that thought, because we got to take a quick break. Mildred, again, hits that stopwatch, and when we come back, just pick up and we're going to talk about it. Great roundtable on this Saturday. Sidelines on great radio stations like 96.6, Alexander City, Lake Martin, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
On Kevin Scarbinsky.
You know, you pointed out, Rob, I think that one of the differences in the way that the regard that fans hold Bear Bryant versus Nick Saban. Bear Bryant was almost like Bigfoot in that people knew he existed, or at least but they didn't see him in person very often. They didn't interact with him, right? Nick Saban has his coach's show. He signs autographs during the breaks. I saw before the Alabama LSU Sugar Bowl for the national championship, they did the show live in New Orleans. I took my family, My son stood in line. They got a football signed. But he's interacting with people. You see him. He's on ESPN. Even if he's not in the national championship game, he's at the national championship game, sucking up all the air in the room and recruiting for Alabama is what he's doing. Of course, all coaches, that's why they accept those gigs. But someone described it to me this way, someone who knew Bryant and is still here for the Saban era, and said people embraced Bear Bryant in a way, even though they never touched him or were around him, that they respect Nick Saban, but they don't admire him or embrace him the way they do Bear Bryant or the way they did Bear Bryant. Doug, does that seem like someone much more experienced than me shared that with me one time, but I thought it was an interesting observation.
Kevin, as usual, spot on. I chuckled at the Bigfoot analogy. Probably literally had a Bigfoot, but I don't know. I just think it's different eras. I sort of, as a rival fan, whose opinion probably matters very little to most Bama fans, but I say it with respect. I just always thought of Coach Bryant as he could take he definitely had some unbelievable elite athletes, but he also, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Bear Bryant also was amazing at taking, kind of underappreciated high school talent. We didn't have any any portal transfers back then, and you didn't have any. I don't remember that many transfers at all, frankly. And if you talk to his beloved players, they talk about Coach Bryant in the same tone as they would a beloved father who developed them. He was tough. He asked them to do more and suffer more to get better than they thought they were capable of, but he made them men. And I don't mean to, divert this to a discussion of Auburn, but Coach Dye was cut out of the same coaching mold, and you just couldn't coach players that way nowadays, could you, Kevin?
No, you could not. And another thing, and Buddy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that stands out to me is the media that covered Bear Bryant, very different from the media that has covered Nick Saban. And I know people have said, and this kind of gets under my skin, when people say the Alabama media, of course, as if it's one generic organization and we all follow, the same marching orders. Not true, of course. I hate the word media in general because we're all different. But I know I've I investigated a fishing trip that a deep sea fishing trip that Julio Jones and Mark Ingram took on the eve of the 2009 season, in which, of course, Alabama ended up winning the national title. Alabama had to declare them ineligible and apply for reinstatement. Nick Saban was not happy with me when I broke that story. Talked to him about it in his office, though. I got his side of it before I wrote it. But those kind of things, you didn't cover the guys, especially early in Bryant's. They didn't cover Bear Bryant like that, did they, Buddy?
No, it was a different deal completely. And I don't know if it's fear, respect, whatever, but it's just, he was a differently. Now, Nick has tried to embrace some of those. His big trick is he gets in the press conference, goes on a rant. And Kevin, as you know, in that rant, you never get your question in about what you want to talk about, because why? And Spurrier told me this because he dictated the terms of the press conference. But that's part of his genius. If I may, just let me speak to this one thing, because then I got to go. My time's up here. This is along the lines of players. I think, Doug, you were talking about, and the kind of players they got, and the fact there was no transfer portal. And Brian was signing 100 guys, and just to keep them away from Auburn, that, and they could never transfer. But here's the thing: this is the kind of admiration and respect that everybody had for Bryant. Back in his teams were small, almost like restaurants, but small, very small guys. He had a back named Billy Tees, and Georgia Tech was a referee who called a game. And of course, Billy Tees didn't play for Bryant, but he respected him. So when Bryant was using these 5'10", 170-pound guys as running backs, whatever, Billy Tees was a referee in football. And he went to Alabama for a game. And as you know, officials often go into locker rooms, or did then, to ask coaches any funky formations. They didn't say funky formations we should know about, any trick stuff that you're doing. So Tease went back in the back to see Bryant, who allegedly Alfan, who's told me this story. And Bryant was there with his houndstooth hat over his eyes, taking a little snooze, pregame snooze. And Pease knocked at the door and said, Coach Bryant, Billy Tease, I'll be your back judge today, whatever it may be. I would just want to know if there's anything special that I should watch for. We should watch for. Bryant said, no, man. Nothing to worry about there, whatever. And so T said, I just couldn't leave it at that. I'm talking to Barry Bryant. I got to say something, right? So he says, Coach Bryant, I just want to tell you what great respect and admiration I have for you, the way you've used these small ball players and winning great big games with players that are undersized. And Bryant said, yeah, well, thank you very much. He said, no, Coach Bryant, I'm really serious about this. I think you could take a 5'8" guy and teach him to guard Wilt Chamberlain. And Brian said, oh, thank you very much, whatever. So Tease turned around to walk out. And all the Alabama players are sitting there on benches with their hair combed, whatever it may be. And as he's walking out, he feels a big paw on his shoulder. And he looks around, it's Bryant. And Bryant says to him, but that ain't to say the big son bitch can't be guarded, though.
Wow, that is, oh man, that is.
Hey,
that's
Rob.
cool.
But hey, Rob, I wanted to pick up on something that Buddy had mentioned earlier because I think it's indicative of kind of the influence of Coach Bryant. You know, if you can measure somebody by the innovations they've been given credit for and the influence they've had long after they're gone. So, Buddy was mentioning like the coaching tower earlier. I've heard that that's attributed to Coach Bryant. That was an innovation that he invented. Just having a tower where you stand up there and you can see all the practice fields. Certainly the state trooper escort, that's been attributed to him. Now every coach has got it. The 85-man scholarship limit, the 25 signing class year after year, all of those recruiting guardrails, if you will, came about because he was signing everybody in sight. And the other teams couldn't sign any talent because he was getting everybody. He would sign like 8 quarterbacks and 60 offensive linemen and that kind of thing. So, you know, I think if you can think of one word to describe him for modern listeners, it would be an innovator. The things that we take for granted today that are part of the college football landscape, either he invented or the rules were put in place because he was too successful doing what he was doing, and they had to put some brakes on that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. And if I could jump in real quick on more, I'm sorry to dominate the conversation. I'm going to leave you after this. This is what an imposing figure Bryant was. You guys remember the story about the magazine piece on how the guy from Georgia fixed a so-called game, and Bryant was talking to Wally Butch, and he got the game plan and whatever, all that sort of stuff. That magazine came out, and it was Saturday Evening Post.
Yeah.
And there was a trial, which, by the way, ended up being the demise of the Saturday Evening Post in Atlanta. And the great John Logue, and maybe you've heard of him before, and I'm sure Kevin has, who was a terrific writer, a Skywriter member, by the way, and also editor of Southern Magazine what's the magazine I'm thinking of?
Southern Living?
Southern Living magazine. Yeah, sorry, I used to subscribe to it. He told me this story, and I got it on tape someplace about this whole thing. When the Bryant trial was going on, and Freddie Russell in Nashville, by the way, had a law degree. He was a sports editor. He covered it, and he was there. And so John Logue would come in. He and the great Jim Minner, the sports editor, would sneak out the back door, hang their coats so Butch would think they were working, sneak out the back door and go down to see the trial. And, you know, in fact, one day the judge said, we'll throw you out if you come back here without a coat in. And so they told the story and Freddie did, about when Bear Bryant finally took the stand, the Saturday Evening Post trial, game over. He was such an incredible witness, those steely eyes and the way he talked. When he got up on there and told those people that it wasn't true and he didn't fix that game, whatever, it was over. And Freddie Russell, who'd been around law before, said, I've never seen a more convincing and impressive witness than Bear Bryant.
Yeah. Doug, you wanted to say something a second ago. Jump in.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. It's so great having Buddy on it. I know you got to cut out, Buddy, but thank you.
We only have about 7 minutes left, so hang in there with us till the end.
Yeah, those backstories, Buddy, that's always good for us that don't remember all of that history. But Yeah, to me, the pregnant question that's in front of us and very much related to this discussion of Coach Bryant, the great Nick Saban, Coach Saban, and all he's done, a legacy at Alabama. And that's the, and I'd like to get Kevin's take first, because Kevin is our poet laureate who really can turn a phrase. And why is it that men who are so competitive, so successful, more often than not, struggle to know when to say when? And that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the final few chapters are not as pretty in terms of winning or championships as they maybe they're deserving and based on their career. And so, there are some who said, Bear Bryant was going to coach as long as he wanted to at Alabama for obvious reasons, but he would have rather the end be more triumphant than it was. And so now the pregnant question is, Coach Saban's got the talent. He just landed a #1 class. What else is new, right? Most years. But will Nick Saban return to form and find a way to confront the emerging force in Athens, Georgia, or will he also have in his book, for all the wins and all the record-setting championships, that the end was not as triumphant as he would like? Kevin?
I'll give you some deep thoughts here. When is Nick Saban going to retire? What's going to make that decision for him? And I look at it this way: what else is he going to do? What else would make Nick Saban get up in the morning, be excited about what he's going to do that day, other than coaching football? People say television. Yeah, he's good on television. But if you've been on television, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. Yeah. There's a lot of sitting around, preparation, waiting for a couple of minute segment on game day. I don't see Nick Saban doing that. I could never see him as an athletic director. Not that he doesn't care about other sports, but he's a football guy. People say he should be the commissioner of college football. We need a commissioner of that sport to look out for the good of the sport. He would be certainly on a short list of candidates. But how competitive is that? He needs competition. That's what makes part of what makes him who he is. So what else would he do? And as long as he can do it, I think he's going to do it.
And Ms. Terry wants him out of the house.
Pickleball.
Can you imagine having to be in the same house as Nick Saban for the entire day?
No.
He would drive you crazy, and it wouldn't take 2 days.
That's true,
buddy. Yeah, buddy, your reaction. That's a great statement from Kevin.
No, I mean, look, these are all these great coaches. I love them all, by the way. I love them all. And I've always loved coaches, period. They're flawed. They make stupid mistakes, but they get a second chance. If you've seen at Auburn, by the way, which is good. They're men with feet of clay. They make mistakes. They do things stupid, whatever, just like us, by the way. And on the whole, I really love football coaches. Have for 60 years, from high school on up. They're dedicated to what they do. They really do want to make the character better of their players. I know it sounds like BS. So, yeah. So Nick will find work. I don't think I have to throw any dinners for him.
Well, bottom line, guys, this an incredible roundtable. Maury Gaston texted in here. He was living in New York in the early and mid 80s after he left Auburn, and he said, "Yeah, the reaction, Giants fans could not believe that Ray Perkins would leave the NFL to go back to college." And buddy, you said something that you had talked to him about that him and Pat Dye, Gene Stallings maybe would be the successors. And it's an incredible story that we just heard. And hey, your honor's dearer than your life. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And Kevin, tell them how they can follow you. And buddy, you do the same thing. Billy Roberts, Doug Dean, AU Dose, incredible. Coach Butch Thompson in the first segment. We're here 6 days a week on great radio stations like Sports FM 104.7 Sports Radio, Cookeville, Tennessee, up on the Cumberland Plateau. But Kevin, let's sign out.
Follow my writing at The Lead, L-E-D-E. You can go to BirminghamLead, LEDE.com to sign up for a subscription. I write twice a week, every Sunday and Thursday. And go to coachsafely.org. If you're involved in youth sports in any way, make sure your sons or daughters' coach is trained. If you're a parent, take the course. You'll be glad you did.
Absolutely. Buddy?
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be on with you guys. Thank you, Billy, and thank you, Doug and Kevin. Great talking to you. Keep writing, Kevin. You got 40 more years to go. You'll catch
45
when you do. And I want to say, you can, if you care about our show, we do a live streaming show 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. We got great people on like Ben Troop, Shane Matthews, etc. We have a website that's actually on. You can go to GatorBaitMedia.com. There's a terrific piece up there right now by Franz Beard on the murderous road. The next 4 basketball games for Florida. I have never seen a more difficult stretch. Look it up. The easiest game they play is at Lexington. Okay. 4 games coming up starting today at Kansas State. We publish new stories every day. Check us out, GatorBaitMedia.com. If you like us, sign up. Glad to have you. And thanks for letting me be on the program.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's an honor always. And tell you something, folks, you subscribe to GatorBaitMedia.com. You'll get a notification from Twitter or Facebook when the show comes on about a minute or two before. You click on it, you watch that show, turn off all that other ancillary crap and learn something. Franz Beard, perhaps the world's most interesting man, along with Frank Duffy and Doug Dean. But yeah, bottom line is every time I listen to a show, I find the things I like or don't like. I go back and watch all these shows like coaches watching tape. But when you get the music, the band back together with 4 brains like we had on the show, Butch Thompson earlier, you're going to learn a lot. But here we're here 6 days a week. So we'll be back with you Monday, www.sidelines.live, and head out and check them out. rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. See you Monday,
Kevin.
Kobe the Corgi says bye.
There you go. Y'all have a great weekend. We are out of here.